So, first of all, what I want to do is sort my query pane out. So we can make this far more intuitive by making groups of these queries, and actually brings into account another technique called query staging, which I really like. Which means, in fact, we don't use the initial queries in the data model. What you use is the staged queries to create a reference for the final query, which then gets committed to the data model. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another group. So I'm going to create a group here, and I'm going to call it staging queries. So you see how you did that? So I just right click there, and then if I move to group and then staging queries, I'll create new group. So I'm going to move this to staging queries, like so. So all of these into the staging area. And there you go. And the last one on here, staging queries as well. And now I'm going to create another group, which I'm going to call my data model. There you go. And okay, so now we don't want, we want to create now a sales table, which is from these tables, like so. Yeah. So now we're sorting all our queries in an effective way, which makes it far more intuitive, not only from yourself. But what we want to do now is create another master table, which combines all of the sales tables. So what we want to do first, we want to reference the tables, as this is going to be the start of all the tables that we want to append together. So I'm going to create this table, put it into my data model, and then I'm going to call it sales. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to start appending this query to 2016 and 2015. So I'm going to select my sales data table, and then I'm going to select the 2016 table, and then I'm going to go to append queries like so. And then from here, I'll just select the 2016, 2017, and append it together. And you can see from there that it's been appended. And then I'm going to append it once more with the 2015 sales table. And then you'll see the first apply steps have occurred. So you can see on the right hand side that each step that we've done has been recorded, and that's as we're recording them, it's running some code up here which is called M code. What's great about this is like a VBA macro recorder, but it's far better though, because we can actually review and delete steps that we didn't actually want it to happen. So we could go around and delete those if there was a mistake, and go back and reapply the append query if we wanted to, and go back and recheck what's been going on. So now that we've created sales, we could go back and make sure that these don't actually get loaded into the data model, because now we created the entire sales table out of these initial queries. So these tables are just queries which are not connected to the data model, and they remain in the background without being loaded, which is really great for not overloading the model. So we could just go back and gray them out. So these ones will not actually be physically loaded; they'll just remain virtual. So some of the other things that we might want to do is have a review of the other columns. And because there's no changes to the other table columns, there's no reason to stage them. So we could just bring them back into the data model and make things much simpler. And now that we've organized all our tables, makes it all simpler, and now we could go ahead and use these. So one thing that we're missing here is actually a date table. So using date table code, which we could also find in this course, you could find some M code that looks like this. And what this is actually a parameterized query. And this will create for you a date table out of thin air, basically. So it will create a virtual date table from some parameters that have been called into the query editor. So what you need to do, you need to just copy this information, jump back to the query editor, and then create a blank query. And then jump into the advanced editor over here, and then just copy and paste this, and then just, yeah, and then just hit done. And then you'll see that this enter query parameter box, which you enter the date. So what you can do here is just type in the dates that you are creating the table for, the date table for. You start from the 1st of the 15th to the end date. You could put into the 31st of the 3rd of 2017, and then you could actually put what month you want to start financial year on, and then you invoke. And then what that does, that creates this date table with all the different date dimensions that we might be able to use in our report. So obviously we want to change the date name, the name of the tables to dates, and then we can bring this over to our data model folder. I also like to create a new group for these to make sure everything is cataloged well. We call this query parameter, and like so. Okay, and then we can move that all the way out of the way. So you can see here on the left-hand side pane that things are starting to be organized really well. And that's the thing when you're starting out with Power BI. All the time you'll be using a lot of different tables at different times. So if you do it like this and you break into groups and organize it, it becomes far, far more manageable. Okay, so now we've got the makers for everything that we need in our data model. Let's actually go through some of the other things that you might need to do before we actually commit these. Yeah. So the data here is relatively well organized and in a relatively good way. There's not a lot to do, but there might be some things like changing column names or changing customer columns or filtering out some information, null values or data types. So all this can be done in the query editor. So to do that, you just right click on one of the columns, and then you can see the number of different options you could of things that you could do, like duplicate columns. So we might want to do here, we might want to break out the first and last name, for example, for the salespeople. So to do that, first of all, what we want to do, we want to duplicate the column, and then if we right click again, you can then split the columns by a delimiter, for example, and you can see here that you could actually select the different types of delimiters that you want. In this case, it's space. So we're going to just go leftmost delimiter for this one, and yeah, and you can see, okay, person says so. Now you got your first name, last name, and you might want to just change the title of the name, and then last name here, and then the last thing we want to make sure that there's no spaces left around these names. So what you could form, you could use a trim function. So if you go trim for both of them, so these are relatively straightforward transformations that you could use. And then, so we can look to our location table now, and we might see some columns that we don't actually need here. So we might want to take out a type. As you can see, C is all the same. So move that one. Area code is also something that we might not use. in our analysis. So different ones, inland zone. So just going to delete those columns. So this kind of transfer is something that you'll do a lot with Power BI and Power Query. So it's very, there are so many times where you query from databases or from standard sources where you find out a lot of the columns in there which you will never use. And if you keep them into your data model, you'll just bloat the data tables, and you just end up causing your model to slow down. So it's better if you're not using these different data columns just to remove them. It'll make your model run a lot faster. So you can see everything gets recorded in that pane, and all would be recorded into the Power Query M language. So this is like a VBA recorder. So so if you can see how it's done this over here. Yeah. So it everything is captured in the M language query editor. So if you run transformations on the yeah. So if we delete something here, so if I delete something here, deleted some column here, and then changed the column here from something to a different transfer, and then try to delete more, you can see here that the code is longer here because you've broken up two different similar type of transformations within the mQuery. So when you're actually doing through this, is try to do everything, all the different transformations, and try to do them in one go, because that makes it far more efficient in terms of the applied steps that will happen in the back end. So this is exactly what I'm going to do right here. So and change everything. So I'm going to delete the error code, do the type, and by clicking Control, you could multi-select all the different columns and just remove them all in one go, like so. So that way you have one effective line of transformation in the M language in the back end. Okay, so now we're looking pretty good here. We've got our data model that we started to build out. We've consolidated all our different data sources into the staging area. Yep. But if something of similar type, like sales or location or customer's location, at all times, try to get those into one table. And that will make your data models far more efficient. So try to think about how am I going to model this in the query. When you're querying and transforming, try to shape your data tables into this one big model of your data. It'd be a lot more efficient for you. And then yeah, and then we're gonna go over how to build these relationship into these tables. So now we come to the date table. So now we could make some further changes over here. So one of the things that we might not actually want to use in our modeling. So we could delete some columns. So I'm going to delete these columns like date international, day of the week, day of the week name, week ending, week number. So we're not going to use any of those. So we could just remove those. You'll see that we've got these odd columns with numbers, but we are going to use these later on. So to sort these columns over here. So if the column is text, but we need it in a certain order, we need a supporting column that provides for us an index to sort out the other columns over there. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to just change the name of this, And I'm also going to call this quarter and year. And then I'm going to make sure that all of these columns that we might be using a particular dimension are named well. So I'm going to put some space here, and I'm going to use this. Might use this one, so I'm going to call this one. Just put a space in there. Now, there's a few other things I might do. First thing, I want a column that just tell us the short months. So here we have the long months, but I would like to have a short month length. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this column, and then I'm going to split the column by 3 characters as far left as possible. So yeah, so and then I could delete this one because I don't need it anymore. Then you can see that we could have a very short one, and I'm going to rename it into short months. And then we're going to rearrange it, bring it over to the left next to the month name column. So there's one other things I would like to do. I would like to create a quarter one. So at the moment I only have a quarter in year, but maybe I just want to break this out into quarters, so because that just gives us another dimension that we can slice back by eventually. So I'm going to duplicate that, split it by split column by 2 characters by far left, and now I have a quarter, and then I can just remove that one and then rename it as a quarters. So, and just bring it over. So hopefully you can see what we're doing here. We are rearranging a lot of different things and making small transformations to make our life easier, because eventually we might use these into our model. Use them as dimensions and time intelligence um, to create all these different visualizations and palettes into the report. And as we go through to the example, you'll see how we can use these again and again and again in our reports. Okay, so now that we've done this, we could review some of the other things that we could do. So there's a number of different things we can do um, up in these ribbons. So if we just click on date, so you have these date selections. So if you drop down, you could see that you could get different metrics, months, weeks. It's all kinds of different matrices. So if we want to use those, it allows us. They're not included in the standard data. Well, actually, you could create these. So say, for instance, if we want to find which day of the year it was, we could just select that, make that selection over here, and automatically transfer that column. So what you need to do here is basically just duplicate, and then you'll be able to do that. So here, yeah. So just duplicate, and then you can make the transformation, and then you will not lose the original column. So if you have any kind of reason why you want to create this column, you would do it in this way. So these are just some examples of how you could use an inbuilt kind of transformation functionality to play around with the date table. Now, one other thing that is interesting, that this, if you look at these icons, you can see this is some information on what the data type is. So if you click on it, you can see that this is the data type of ABC123. So what it does, Power BI guesses what the data type sometimes, and it guesses it wrong. So it's really important that you double check and select the right data type that is suitable for the data transformations that you want. So now that we are happy with the tables that we have and the information, now we can now commit this to our data model. And what it's going to do, yeah. So yeah, so we will commit the tables that we would like to commit. So we just press close and apply, and this what's going to happen now is going to put these tables into our data model. and it's going to commit them to the Power BI file, upload them into the file itself, and then after it would load, you'll have it in the data modeling.